Today we discussed with Elia and chose the ear and thalamus because a lot of people consider the ear to be the point of listening and hearing. In fact, the ear of the man is one of the most active parts of the head or the reception of information and feels from the environment, where when the information or the energy received cannot be, or it's not at the level that can be used or utilized by the body, is dissipated backwards out of the body. In a way, your ears, um, despite the current medical terms, is not the receiver, but actually is a sender of energies and the informations which are not needed and continuously reaches the skull of the man and the brain itself. One of the reasons that you have such elaborate conditions, and as Dr. Elia explained, goes right to the center, to the inner part of the brain, is to take out and dissipate the information which is not needed. It's a part of the exhaust system for the brain. In so many ways, we always think, just because we are so much attached to physicality, that the ear is to receive everything. But at the same time, our ears are the senders and remover of so much information which is not needed and can be dissipated from the brain area directly. In so many pictures and in so many ways what we see, the brain is the replication of the whole structure of the human body. So when we receive information as sound, we receive information at the same time as energy and the plasmatic fields. We do not hear, or some of them, some people can hear, some others cannot hear the same noise. But the noise and the fields and the energy is absorbed continuously by the skull and the brain. And if you put a brain as like into a, let's say, a microwave, you put any item and just keep on feeding it with radiation of different types and plasmatic energy of different type, sooner or later it cooks. Unless it has a system built in that can dissipate and remove the excess energy directly from internally out of it, especially from its center. And this job by brain through evolution has been given to the ear. The traffic is two ways, but is more inside out than outside in by the ear. Because the information and the energy in all forms are received by the total area of the skull of the man and directly sent into the center, into the brain structure. And the only way and the only access we have to remove so much energy and so much information is through the ears. And in that process, the brain has made itself a filter system, a cleaning up system of energies. But at the same time has a reverse work too, which is what is the environment can make at the level can the physical part use for its existence. The ear of the man is not just to hear. You can hear without the ear, but the ear structure is needed for removal of plasmatic and all the energies which is received from the environment into the brain structure. If you can go in parallel, when we spoke with the eye, when in space you receive photons in the eye, you get the flashes of light that is seen by astronauts. We've spoken about it before. Our brain continuously receives the same kind of energies. And these energies are not needed by the brain. Some are used, and the surplus in the same way is emitted out through the ear's structure of the inner ear to the middle ear and outer ear. And if the information is not at the level or is at the condition that is needed action of the physicality, as the ears cannot hear, but the emotional part of the brain and the physical part of the brain observe and receive the information, the physicality would react to it. And for this process to connect the emotional part and the brain part to the physicality, the balance part of which is the balances the brain for the pressure of the blood which comes in for what is to be received, because for the blood to come from the heart to deliver the right amount of energy to the brain area, it needs a certain pressure. This is done by the inner part of the ear. The same system of balancing through a neural system is passed on to the foot of the man. What does this mean? This means that if, for example, you don't hear or you hear, or the noise and the information and the energy is received by the skull without the ear, or bypassing the ear, or is at the level that the ear cannot change it to the understandable information as a sound for the man, for the emotional part to guarantee survival, it has connected the nerve system directly through, like a toes of the man and the foot, directly through the inner balancing of the ear in a section to the foot. And this is very vital because this guarantees that the body can run away from the position that the emotional part can be destroyed. A lot of you, especially ladies who wear open shoes in the summertime, have clipped your little toe somewhere to a furniture or a chair or whatever. And in that process, if you notice, for some times or for a long time, you find you twist what they call you twist your ankle. You find you turning, your foot turns. The reason for this is because the little toe is all the toes are balancing neural system for this nerve which is in the center, which is connected to the inner ear of the man for the balancing of the what I call the top core. So when you clip your toe, you disbalance this nerve system. And then for it to balance itself and not to go what you call to fall or to go dizzy, body has to completely adjust its physicality. But in fact the inner core of the inner part of the inner ear dictates how this balancing of the foot is done, that it can save the life of the man at a point of danger if he hears something. So you find a lot of twisted ankles, a lot of injuries with the spinal cord, and then it comes with the discs and it goes back to the nerve discs damages and whatever we see, just because of the balancing of the inner ear, which is connected to the physicality for the physical part. The inner ear of the man not only balances the whole structure of the brain, but to guarantee the life of the emotional part through the physical part of the brain, has connected itself to the foot, because that's the only thing which can run you away from danger. And if you disbalance it, you'll find all the structures goes. So a lot of doctors know, I have shown it to Dr. Eli as well, how you can put a little toe back in position, the nerve system comes in balance, the twisting of the ankle and the balancing of the ear goes back and you live a normal life. But in that process, which 99% of the doctors are not aware of, you end up with a lot of disc damage, hernia and the rest. So the inner ear and the structure of the inner ear has a direct effect on the physical part control and the emotional and the receipts of the energy within the structure of the brain of the man. How the ear has evolved over time, it has made a very convenient positioning for the body, is that it sits in a position that is more or less in line with the vision, with the eyes, and it sits somewhere between the nose and the eyes, and the three elements together in one line make sure the guarantee of the life of the emotional part of the body. So whatever the emotional part needs to guarantee existence, it has made for itself a hole to look into, to receive, or to get rid of. In so many ways, if it's hard to understand, the work of the eye is the same as the work of the ear. As you can see through it, you can receive information through it too. You look out of the eye, and from out of the eye the information comes into the brain. The same process repeats itself with the ear. As much information as you receive, you give out. It's very much like satellite dish. It receives and transmits at the same time. But the man has always looked at, because he can hear through it, it looks at it as the only organ, a job that it is to hear what it needs to be done. And then, if the world of science understands this, that the ear is not just for listening, but it's for transmitting too, then you understand how and the way emotions and feelings released by the body without using a neurosystem through the ear of the man. This is very fundamental. This is one of the cornerstones of the survival and life of the man. This is why Dr. Elia in the last sentence explained that if the two crash, then it's bleeding and sudden death. Because the information and dissipation of energy and the information cannot be done, is not that it's received, it cannot send out, and everything messes up inside the information transferring internally between the emotional and the physical part. If, as I said before, the information, the strength balance between the physical part and the emotional part is disturbed, that there is no connection, this becomes detachment and the death of the man in the physical form. And one of these conditions is created by the ear. When the ear cannot transmit what it receives to create that balance from inside out, then you find death or separation of physicality from emotional part. The whole concept and connection of the ear is not to hear the sound, but to understand the emotion of the sound. Then we transfer that emotion into our emotional part, and it's registered and ingrained in our DNA and RNA. When you go through to hear a sad news, a noise is a noise. A cry, we made it cry, because that frequency, that noise in that form brings us a reaction, and that comes from the emotional part. When we hear laughter, laughter is nothing but a noise, but its effect reaches the emotional part, it does nothing to the physical part. So the ear are the channels to the emotion of the environment of the man where he exists. In the coming time, when we travel into space, man will understand more purposes for the ear. Through our ear, we feel, we absorb the energy of entities which do not have physicality. But we can hear, we can sense their presence and their emotions. You cannot smell them, they don't smell, so you cannot show reaction. You cannot see them because they are invisible to the level of the amino acid of the man. But through ears we can hear and sense their emotions. That's why the ears has been put at that level, so close and directly internally, very close to the emotional part. And for the reaction to the physical part. The structure of the brain, the existence and survival of the brain, highly and totally depends on the work of the ears, in what receives or what does not receive. The people who go through losing their ear or whatever, even you chop your ears off, the same process still goes on. You still dissipate and received information the way it has to be. This brings us back to a very interesting point. I was explaining this to Dr. Elia earlier and she mentioned it in her part. If you remember last time when we spoke about the little tongue in the back of your throat, it gives you indication of the behavior of the man. Strangely enough, your ear gives everything away in one go. If you are trained, if you understand the structure of the working of the brain in the emotional part, the emotional part manifests itself in physical part. And your ear is connected directly to your emotional behavior because it receives everything through, so it has to have certain ways. So, when you see a man or a woman, in a very quick way, we already have registered in our brains, we are not so much aware of it. The shape of the ear, the closest of the ear to the skull, the further the ear stands, the upright of the spoon, the pointing of the ear, will give you every indication what kind of the man you got in front of you. Emotional, a cheat, correct man, somebody who's there to listen to, and somebody there just pretending to listen but is trying to defraud you from your emotions. Because the ear is directly connected to the emotional part of the brain in communicating and receiving, it has to mimic its master. Nothing is closer to the emotional presence of man than the ear. So when you see people with any structure, the only thing they cannot hide is their ear. Then when you look, you know what you have in your hand, what you got and what you can expect from the relationship. Be it a business, be it emotional, be it whatever. You find out, go into details, a lot of successful politicians which are very good liars have the same kind of ear, because they are emotionless. The seat of power is more important to them than the emotion. Because to them, emotionality is detached from physicality. And this is very important if and when, and the time comes when we say the boat of Noah is ready to go. Because you understand what you have, how you have. There is a lot of research done in this field, but now that we understand emotionally connected with the physicality, this is where it shows itself. Because the ears are an eye into the emotion of the man. This puts a lot of people walking with the hands on the ears from now on. Elia is laughing. You find nations and cultures which covering of the ear is a habit. It's the nation which the emotion runs very deep. The reason being is that by covering the ear or the head, you closely attach your ear to the skull, and that brings you closer to the emotional part. And we see this especially with the religious fanatics. Doesn't matter in what section and what kind they cover themselves. This is part of the process which, even when I do systems for the same disease, I always ask to see the volunteer. They think I listen, but I look at the structure of how and what kind of person I have in my hand in guaranteeing the success of the process. And you find out, and we've seen it in our trials in Middle East, we find a lot of problem, especially with the female process of changing anything. It has a lot to do how we work, how we close, how we behave, is how we position our ears in respect to the structure of our physical body. This is vital, it's very important, especially in the space technology of the future, how we can set up a system to know that we are not lied to. Don't forget, go back to the system where I set my volunteers in front of the machine. They hear to instruction, they listen to instruction. And to that instruction, they have to show their behavior of the emotion. So, through the ear, I control the emotion to see what I receive and what is good in my hand. And unknowingly, the system receives the fields and backwardness and the forwardness. What the system sends out as a positive or negative gives us an indication of what the field sits and what the person is, and how much of it is received and how much of it is received incorrectly in the behavior of the man. So, one of the structures, one of the main dimensions of the future of the man, when you don't have the body, in the physicality of worrying about what's going to happen, the position of the ear in the head, the shape of the ear in the head, on the head, the way it is, what I call position in the angle to the closeness to the skull, gives a lot of information. And you'll see a lot of mental disturbances. People have a specific shape of ear because they receive and they emit in a certain length energy, in a certain strength energy, that allows the ear to dissipate so much information or energy which is coming. So, in fact, an eye to the soul of the man is through his ears, if the man understands the truth about the sound which he receives, even though invisible and undetectable. Any questions?
Yeah, I have a question. Just like the uvula, you said it changes as we grow. Does the ears change then also, or is it stuck when you're mature?
That's it. As we said, that's what you have, and you cannot change your character.
Okay.
What if somebody changed their ears? There's a tradition that some cultures have. Like, for example, if somebody's ear, if a child's ears look like they stick out too much, there's a technique called pinning, which pins the
Pinning,
ears
yeah.
back. Yeah.
Yeah, then
Does
what they'll
that
be
change the
interested,
actual person to do that? Does it change
yes,
their
yeah.
personality, and how would it change them? What does the
Very,
ears that
very,
stick out, what does that mean when the ears stick out, what we call too much?
very much. Or is pointed like Mr. Spark.
Right,
They,
yes,
oh,
that's always an indicator of something
okay.
mischievous, it seems.
No, actually, it's just somebody who receives too much. A pointing ear is very much like a leaf on a tree, on a plant. When you have points, it means of receiving. It has a different meaning. When you pin an ear, psychologically, if you trace these people at adulthood, you have a psychological problem. Because the body was built to dissipate and receive certain ways, certain energies, and now you have disturbed it. Now it receives something which is not balanced with the emotional part, or even with its physical part. You find these, if you follow the life of the people who what they call pinning, then in their 40s and 50s, you find a lot of psychological problem. The shape of your hand, the shape of your finger, the shape of your toes, the shape of your foot gives a very direct information about your emotional part in respect to your physical part. The shape and the position of your ears gives a very direct indication of your emotional behavior.
Okay,
Over millions of years, sorry about that.
sorry.
Over millions of years, our eyes has been trained to assess what we see and how we see it. It's very much like if we see, let's say, an animal with a drop ear, we know there is nothing but the ears sticking up, we know it's alert. Because it shows his emotion, it shows his position, condition mentally and psychologically. It's the same with the man. But unfortunately, we don't have muscles to move our ears around to hide it. So when it's done and it's fixed, it's a reflection of the mirror of your emotional part.
Didn't have my mic. Sorry, I didn't have my microphone on in live stream. I'll have to repeat that strange thing. There was a news item that I just happened to come across yesterday, and it was about a person who was arrested for licking someone's foot and then stealing their shoe. And then, in light of the information that's come out today from Mr. Keshe and from Elia with this relationship between the feet and the inner ear and the emotional part of the brain, how would you explain this kind of behavior, which we call, odd, but it's not that odd in terms of the foot fetish kind of thing is, fairly common as far as fetishes go, apparently. Can you explain some of that, Mr. Keshe?
Dr. Elia is trying to tell me something holding her nose and ears. Let her explain, then I'll tell you something about it. No, you say your part, I don't have to say anything.
I just asked Mr. Keshe to explain what is the relation between ears and nose and the position between the ears and nose, and if the enters of the ears, what we call in the middle hole, what you have, and the tip of the nose, how that line which the cross two enters of the ears and tip of the nose related with emotional part of the brain. Just 1 second.
Let's go back to your licking foot. Mr. Abdullahi from
Not me. It's not my problem. It's my friend.
No, it's the question.
Yes, right.
No, okay, let me say, okay, you have to understand a lot of things about a man, the foot, the nerve in the foot, which goes directly to the ear balancing and emotional part. One of these gestures, you call it somebody licking somebody's foot, comes why the Pope has to wash the feet of men, or recently women and children. Why? What does symbolically means? The foot is connected directly to emotion and humbleness, to be accepting that I'm lower than you. But what is important is, if you notice, which is a very common practice if you are lovers, that men or women play or rub or whatever with each other's foot. We under the table tap each other and play with the toes when you're in love with your partner. Because through it, we reflect our emotion through physicality to the emotional part through the new nerve system. Because we find balance. If you look at people like, which is fashionable now to wash the feet of 40 people by Pope, you have to look at the physical posture and how and the way it's done. It's not done with sincerity, it's done because I have to. It's very much like I explained yesterday, the posture between the Iranian minister and the American and the European minister sitting down. Position of comfort. When you lick somebody's foot and steal the shoe, the reason you stole the shoe because the odor, the smell, the taste, and what you gave to the foot or you licked from the foot is carried in the shoe. So instead of you can't carry the person, you carry the shoe, so you got what you wanted. It's not that they stole the shoe. The shoe carries that sense which at the point of licking it, the odor comes, registers a comfort zone in the brain, and so I can't take the body because body is snatching, so I can steal the shoe but carry the same odor, that it gives the same emotion. The neurosystem, especially the central nerve, which goes right across the center of the foot, carries every information you want to carry for the emotional part of the body of the man. And it's never been understood. I teach this quite a lot to doctors and physiotherapists which I work with. You want to put man's physical part out of pain or spinal damage or uncomfort in the pain as a hernia or whatever, or a back problem, correct the 5 toes position. It's a specific way to be done. I always teach it. And you put the foot and the ankle in position, the nerve goes back in its original line of forces. It's a pressure, magnetic, gravitational field force line. And then with it, it corrects the rest of the upwardsing of the spinal cords, the spinal structure to the neck and to the brain, because it releases the pain, it gives a comfort, release. Emotionally, you're not at pain. Then you find the physicality corrects itself. As I said when I teach this to the physiotherapists, none of them would like to use it. Because when you put it right, you don't go back in. Half of the disc problems is sorted. So, as you don't go back in, he hasn't got the income. He makes money as long as you're in pain. And if he takes you out of it, you're not going back. The emotional nerve, or what I call the balance nerve in the center of the foot, is, when it's disturbed, is a cause of some 80% of the back problem, disc compressions and the rest of it. Because when it's disbalanced, physically you're disbalanced, then emotionally disbalances you, then the brain has continuously to produce information to keep a balance. And then so the energy goes and the rest of the damage which you see. In fact, what it is, when this nerve is disturbed in the foot, It has a very specific structure, this nerve. If you look at your two half of the brain, the left side is responsible for the right side. The inner part of your brain is upper leg. The top of your brain in the center to the side of the ear is your lower leg. The foot is just above the ear to go down into the center of the brain, and the toes sit just above the ear hole into the center ear to the middle ear. And when you correct it, because of the neurosystem and balancing of the pressure, it corrects the inner ear and the balance of the body. And in a way, if you want to understand it, it's just you trying to put sticks together. You keep, let's say, boxes together, and you try to walk with a lot of boxes, or let's say glasses, in middle of the crowd. You find that you have to juggle that the top glass doesn't drop down. The bottom glass is your neurosystem in the center of the foot and your ankle, and the top glass on top of the pyramid is your brain. You juggle, you move left and right and left and right, and this is what happens to your spine. And you literally crush your spine to pieces, and you have a disc damage and the rest. When we go visual correct, we can show. I show you how you can use your wife, your husband, or whatever to correct this, and you find out 80% of the back damages, spinal cord damages, discs and hernias and sciatic nerves, literally within 48 hours disappears. And then you have to repair the disc damage, which is very easy to, and that's why we are well known for our work, because we understand the connection between this nerve, which is what I call a balancing nerve, and the inner ear. You have to do it in a specific way to be able to release it. Next question. Nobody there, we can go.
There's somebody here. There was a question from Wolf about, that's common for many people. What is tinnitus and how can it be cured?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, the buzzing noise in the ear.
Yes, I get that occasionally, actually, because of my.
Can I be very correct and direct?
Of course.
Ask your conscious what's wrong and what you have thought the wrong way.
Well, for me, it's being in an environment that is way too loud, and I needed to remove myself from those overly loud environments, which create a resonance that lasts for days, basically, from exposures. So I realized I have to stop doing that. Just stop it, as it said.
Interesting enough, a lot of it, now this technology, exactly what you talk, but in a very subtle way, is used by security services to intrude and control people through new flat screen televisions. What you're talking about, what the question was asked, is a lot of the new flat television screens, which are heavily marketed, are used specifically to create sub-noise level to control. A lot of people, I'll put some links on this, you can read it. This is what they call screen jamming interference. They can even give you, it's like a buzzing noise, you don't hear it unless you're sensitive to it. The frequency tuned to 9 millihertz, if I'm correct. And then they can give you materials without you knowing, even through a handshake or whatever, that you become a receiver. They can put a little like aerial antennas in the pillow or in the blanket, you don't feel it. But when you sleep, you're in touch with it, you short circuit it. And they use it as a subtle noise in the ear. And through that is the reverse diagnosis of illnesses which is developed by the Russians. And in the last week or the week before, when we had our Italian friends here, he explained. So they can cause you diseases which don't exist in your body through your ear. This is a new type of what you call intrusion through the new medias. I was talking about this to a specialist very recently. One of the reasons we have put the security dome around the building is for this reason.
Can you speak a little more about that? People would be interested to have more information about protective environments.
Yes, the situation. I mean, if you are here in the building, we can show it to you. Even my laptop is covered in the same basis at the moment. What happens? They use a specific frequency. If I get the link, I'll put it up. You can. It's in my. I have it. You can read it. This technology is the reverse technology used or developed for the medicine, that they can play noises in your ear and find the diseases in your body. It's a very effective way of discovering diseases. I have done a lot of research on it years ago with somebody who a lot of you, if you live in Belgium, know him very well. With his partner, we did a lot of research into this, detecting noise, using the noise through the ear. It's a Russian technology. It's done a lot with the Germans. Now it's part of the scene of the detection of the illnesses. It's 40 to 60% accurate. And I spent 6 months researching into this, because in the space we can't take doctors. So now we're looking into this system. Then about 2 weeks ago, I found out what's the fault with this system. And now with our Italian Keshe Foundation groups in developing the software, I explained to them where the problem is, and within the next few months, we'll develop the system which makes it a little bit more accurate. But you can assess, for example, what is the problem, if the problem is with the kidney or is it with the liver, and what it is. So now they use this technology in reverse to cause the problem in the kidney and the liver. This was what part of the poisoning system of my body in the past few weeks was done this way. The only thing is, I specifically chose this house that this could not be done, because it was done to us in Belgium. And unfortunately, we had a security break barrier, and they managed to install the system somewhere in the building. So with the dome which we have created, we have blocked it. And we see it immediately, the first minutes we knew the change. What you do, I better don't give too much away at the moment till we are secure. But what you do, you create, it's very much like a virus, like E. coli and Ebola, which we are doing in Africa. We create a line that the field links up with the spherical field of the dome. Doesn't matter, you can put a system next to the ear of the person you want to damage, but automatically links up to the system. At the moment we have a 50 to 100 meter cover in buildings, and now the White House has come on the cover in past few days too. So what they do, they send you a frequency specific. This is highly developed by IMEC of Belgium. We are aware from what's happening and how it comes. Sooner or later it'll come up. It's the new type of warfare. If you go back, part
Mr.
of
Keshe,
it.
to be clear, when you said White House, you mean the White House that you're living in, not the White House.
No.
Okay.
We have a White House and a Yellow House in the foundation.
Right. I just wanted to make sure that was
White House
clear
means our white.
when they transcribe this conversation.
Yeah. As you know, we invited the man of the White House to our White House. We're still waiting for a response. But the position is that It is how they use the technology and how it's used. I was telling Caroline a few days ago, I'm gonna go and start looking for the. Do you remember those black and white tube televisions, the valve ones? Those they cannot interfere with. You're safe. But part of this electronic build-up of the flat screen has allowed a huge intrusion that I explained to you a trial which is going with some services. How much of it this we can divulge, I don't know. Let me tell you this way. You know the hospitals have a budget. For example, a hospital has to create €1 million a week to keep it running, that it can cover its expenses. So when you go to the hospital, even if it's nothing wrong with you, you have to have an operation, because your operation brings 20,000, which pays part of that from the insurance company for running of the hospital. That's why a lot of operations nowadays are false operations. And I know directors of hospitals who have resigned because they can't stand this cheat. Now, some trial has been done where, for example, in this area, they decide to increase the kidney diseases that the hospital can do research on the kidney. So through screens, flat screens, they create a condition that a lot of people in different areas within a certain zone will have certain diseases that they can do the research, or they can generate money for the hospital. It's gone to the extreme, this process. Now we have developed as part of the plasma technology to block this. We will divulge. I told you when I'm sure when we have the American securities here, military, they will see it in operation. You do not block. Blocking does not work, because then they change their frequency to something else. What you do, you link in like a virus, as I said, that all the fields become part of the system. You know, as part of the poisoning used here, they spread the living quarters with a specific powder, which is a magnetic powder. Then they intrude your body through the fields they release through the flat screen. We immediately were informed by the national securities what's been done. Marco and Arman have taken a picture of the dust. So I put immediately into operation what we knew to remove it.
Parrot mini drones.
To neutralize it. And they're working very hard to do whatever they can to be able to activate it. It's a greenish dust particle, is a magnetic, metallic, and it's very much like a phosphor. And as it comes in touch with your skin, it gets like sinks into, it's so talkish that it sinks to your skin. And then they saturate the environment with the frequencies from the flat screen. So, as I said, you receive all the noise and everything through your ear. They literally cook your brain. And we noticed this was done through our even laptops and iPads, so we have covered screen, everything has been covered totally.
People may not believe that the computer screens can do that sort of thing, and both the screen and the audio can both be used, because I played, actually played my computer screen. I'm showing it on the live stream there now. I've got a video I made a few years ago of actually touching the screen and altering the sound in a crystal radio by touching the screen. And different colors that come up on the screen emit different frequencies. And you can actually change the sound coming through a radio by different colors on the screen of a computer screen. So it's pretty clear to me from previous experiments that could easily be used against someone if they were someone that was trying to combine frequencies or colors or sounds all in certain ways to activate some kind of strange powder that might be dispersed in the environment, or some
Right.
other two-part component that would get mixed together. So some sort of development that could protect against that would definitely be
What is this?
helpful for people that see that feel that they're targeted. At least some people feel that they're targeted that way. There's quite a lot of people feel that way.
I think we are gone.
No,
Where are we back on again? Can you hear us?
again.
You're on.
Yeah, no problem. I have to explain something to Marco 1 second. In some countries they use the word diode, and in some countries they use it light. It's not a real sugar. No, it's that they don't want you to get fat. That's all it is. Okay, so what
Can I
happens if they actually do this? Yeah, go on, carry on.
I was going to ask you, because you've mentioned this before in a workshop or some other part, where you were talking about aluminum GaNs and how it links up to phosphor. Can you explain that relation at this point?
No. We come to this when we speak about just 1 second. What is there? He can't go down.
Sir, I didn't want to make your
Just
life
one second.
miserable.
No. Just our mascot has walked up with Armin, and it sits there for hours. We have a little dog called Topoli, who's a mascot of the foundation. He goes everywhere. Now we moved to a different building. He's with us. No, what happens is that when we come to the setting up of the system in respect to the existence of the man with the DNA and RNA, with a phosphor chain, it creates a specific gravitational magnetic field. It's the fingerprint of the human race. And this gravitational magnetic field of the phosphor on the DNA gives an indication to our presence in the dimension of the people or entities which cannot physically detect us. The phosphor in conjunction with RNA creates a specific glow. It's like, as we say, the sun and the earth, the interaction creates a daylight. And this is a fingerprint of, this is a fingerprint of human body or human race. In coming time, I'll show it when we start the space technology and space left. These are the things which we teach gradually.
It was in the news today that DNA can survive in space, they've determined, and can enter back into the atmosphere.
Yeah, because it's GANs, huh? They just realized what we've been saying for a long time. So it's the physicality.
Mr. Kesh, on that system that detects the illnesses through sound, I know a little bit about those. Did you find out that there's a certain percentage of people that have genetic issues that cause the difference for the efficiency of it?
I don't know much about it because I had to do this with when it was offered to us about 4 or 5 years ago in Belgium. I explained to you that I did some tests with a guy who with a girlfriend of or partner of a guy who we knew through the foundation, and we tried to validate the correctness of it. I have key full of information about this, but I don't know. I couldn't understand it. This is the first time. It's been made more efficient recently by the Italian group, which is working with us now, hopefully. And so we'll see what comes up. I don't know much about it other than that. Because I tested it to see if my system, the use of it can show its results or a change of whatever they are supposed to show. And in most of the cases, it doesn't do. The thing is, the information they gather is on a matter level, on the frequency of the matter. So what we do with the Italians, we are changing everything to the plasma. They usually put a headphone on you, or they give you like a joystick to hold that they can collect their data. But the joystick has a wire with a connected to the metal that it takes your impulses or your heat. So what we are doing, we're changing the stick instead of the wire and holding it to very much like the ball which Armand and Marco carry for control. So we're changing the system of control. Instead of the wires, we're using nano-coated layers, which is information of the plasma of the body, not the electrons, which are actually don't exist in transmission. Then it changes different data. You become more accurate because a liver has a plasmatic field and a kidney the same. And if you put copper in it, will what do you call it? Will show differently. The new
like it'll work good.
technology. We'll see it now because we're going to work in operation of the real operation of the body, not in electrons. As Rick said, they just found out that DNA can exist in space, so it's a GANs. So you have to understand its property through its GANs, or the plasma of it, not through its electrons, because it has no electron. But in the body of a man, and let me tell you, in the body of man, unless you put a nail or ear pierce in it, there are no electrons. You will not find a single electron inside the body of the man. And how do they want to measure it? Because they use a wire which is electronic.